Year 2017. Rules. There you go. Let's get started, shall we? To start us off with the worst ofs is number 1, Forest Fairy 5. And it's a piece of dog shit. I really don't have much to say about it because I only watched a couple episodes and dropped it, but it really speaks a lot about a show when you can't even reach to the 3-episode mark when each one is only like 10 minutes long. And the worst part about it is I try to get through as much shows as I can before giving my opinions on them, but if I drop them, they're bad. No question. And this one's a cut above the rest. Like, seriously, the characters are nothing special. I wouldn't go as far to say that they're one-note because that is an insult to one-note characters. And the animation, oh god, the animation, it's like, if you're in art school, this would be a good example not to use CGI, not to utilize it, and it's just awful to look at, and don't even get me started on the audio. I think the best thing that I can say about Forest Fairy 5 is that I could hear what people were saying. Like, seriously, that is the only highlight to Forest Fairy 5. The fact that you could actually hear what was being said. And even then, you could tell that the actors were not giving their all in it. They didn't give a shit. I mean, I can get what they were going for with this, but it still turned out very bad, like awful, terrible, fucking horrible. But yeah, if you can get it farther than me, if you get farther in it than I could, then you are a trooper. And there's nothing really much else to say about it other than it's fucking awful. Don't watch it. Try to avoid it if you can. But if you're curious about it, I can't stop you. I really can't. Just be warned. It really is awful. And I'm surprised that anyone could find anything to like about it. Okay, so number 2 is King's Game. And it's kind of funny to watch. Like, you ever watch a horror movie and you just are waiting for someone to die just to see how gory they'll make it? It's kind of like that. And that's pretty much the only good thing that it has going for it, aside from some of the acting, which is kind of decent. But even then, there's nothing really that special about it. And the animation is Blood of War's levels of bad. And it's kind of surprising because the studio that worked on it has done some decent things animation wise, and I'm kind of surprised that they didn't bring their A game with this, even though that it's awful. Like, seriously, if they brought their A game, this could have been even more fun to watch because of how much effort they could have put into the gore. But no, there's not really much going for it aside from a bit of the violent deaths and all that. Like, seriously, there's this one scene where a kid's head just spins all the way around like an owl does, and then he's still alive despite of it, and then he just dies a split second later. I don't know how that works. If you can still talk after your head is twisted all the way around, let me know, because I don't think that's possible. But yeah, if I had to say a negative thing about it being a so bad it's good kind of show, it's that it drags quite a bit, and you will really have to either endure through the boring parts in order to get to the good stuff. But it's kind of worth it, considering that these characters are so fucking awful, you can't wait to see them die a horrible, painful death. And the way that they start things out is kind of misleading, too, because there's this one character especially, and some of you who might have already seen it will probably know who I'm talking about. Like, she goes from the sweetest person on earth to a psycho bitch in like only an episode, like only an episode and a half, and it's just dumb. But yeah, if you can, I would honestly recommend it. Just be aware that it can get pretty boring in quite a bit of the time. So, yeah. Okay, so if you are going to King's Game or Osama Game or however you want to say it for the poor execution of horror, then you're going to go to Nora, Princess and Cat for a horrible execution of comedy, because it's not legitimately funny. It's the kind of funny that you laugh at and not with. And that's kind of the worst thing that you can do to yourself when you're trying to make people laugh, is to make people laugh at you and not with you. So, yeah. I'll admit, there is some potential here with the premise, I guess. It's kind of weird. Like, seriously, this guy turns into a cat because of some demon princess from hell. And, yeah. But I guess they didn't want to make a actual adaptation of the source material because it's a visual novel, and you can't really do much with visual novels. There have been some visual novel adaptations that have worked before, like the Fate series for one, and there's also Steins Gate, which I really need to get into because of Zero. But yeah, this really wanted to be a comedy, but it failed miserably, and yet it's still pretty fun to watch just to see where they go with their jokes and punchlines, and to see how bad they actually get. And yeah, if you're looking for an actual comedy here, then this ain't for you. But if you're into stuff that doesn't really care, and you don't have and you have just a bit of time on your hands, you can watch this. It's a short anime. You can watch it in an afternoon if you want to and make a thing of it. So yeah. Okay, so I'm going to cheat a little bit here with these next couple of entries because they're pretty much on the same level of boring and forgettable. Okay, so the first one, number 4, or somewhere in between 4 and 5, is Dies Irae. I think it's some sort of Latin or German phrase. I don't know, but anyway, going on to the German bit, this is sort of about this one kid that has to go up against superpowered Nazis. I'm not kidding. That's literally what it is when you chop it down. And funny thing, main antagonist, he's the guy who spearheaded the Holocaust. Oh boy. I don't know if it gets into very offensive detail aside from that, but it's just boring, and you shouldn't make something about Nazis and superpowers boring. I don't know how they were able to do that, but they did. They really did. And if I had to take one good thing about it, aside from its potential, premise-wise, and some decent acting, it would be this one insult that they have for one of the characters. Like, seriously, they combine the Japanese word for idiot, baka, with the name of one of the characters, Kazumi, and you can see where I'm going with it. And that's pretty much the only good thing that I could get out of this, was a unique insult involving the language that the medium is using. So, yeah. As for Sengoku Nightblood, which is number 5 on here, which makes it only like a little better than Dies Irae, it's still pretty damn forgettable. Okay, so here's how it goes. Think of any isekai anime you've ever seen and shove Sengoku period warriors and people into the mix, and also add a little bit of Twilight, and That's Sengoku Nightblood for you. Yeah, I don't get it either, but honestly, I could see it working if it were written better, and I don't think it could be, because the thing about these two entries is that they're based off of games, and the first one, for starters, DS Irae, is based off of a visual novel that had problems during its release, and yeah. As for Sengoku Nightblood, if I remember right, it's based off an otome game of all things. So it's targeted towards women, and that's even more apparent when we meet the protagonist, who is... what's her name? No, seriously, what's her name? I can't remember. She is such a blank slate that she doesn't even have much of a presence here, and yeah. The worst thing about it, really, is its visuals. Like, seriously, the animation can be okay if it wanted to be, but the visuals themselves are freaking bad, and it's mostly chopped down to the fact that everything is so overexposed or underexposed, mostly overexposed, that you can barely make anything out. Like, seriously, I think they wanted to try and get out of having actual color palettes for these characters, just by putting a big-ass light into the background. And, yeah, it's pretty bad. If they just tried a little better, it could have been average. Both of these could have. But they just come across as dragging and boring. And there's not much saving them. There really isn't. So, yeah, I'd skip them, because they're not as bad as the first three entries were, but with how boring they are, they don't leave much of an impression, which is even worse when you think about it. So, yeah. Next up is the world of Yami Zukan, and it's a terrible anthology series. Like, I get the inspirations that they were going for here, but for a story to work with most people, you have to develop it in a way that's believable. You can't just rush through things and just get to the cool stuff immediately, because that's just like, oh wow, that's cool, that's kind of frightening, and then you just forget about it afterward. If you really want a story to stick with people up here and right here, then you really got to try, and they didn't. They just wanted to churn something out real quick. Because, like Noratoto, you can get done with this in an afternoon if you wanted. Heck, you could watch it in the morning before breakfast if you really wanted, because it's again a short anime, and that's the worst part about it, is its runtime. If they let each story run its course in like a 20-minute spectrum, they could have really worked if they put enough development in them, but they didn't. There's a few ideas here that I see working in both a comedic and horrific standpoint. Like, there's this one story about a clown in a mirror or whatever, and he drags people in just to eat them or something. But other than that, there's really not much else going for it. There's quite a few visuals that I liked, but at the same time, there's no animation really. There's hardly any animation. So, yeah, if you really want a good anthology, look up these three shows. There's Beyond Belief, Fact or Fiction, Tales from the Dark Side, and Tales from the Crypt. Those are the only three that I can think of, because I remember watching them on Chiller back in the day when it was still on Dish Network. So yeah, if you can find those, look them up, watch them, see what you think, because they'll definitely be a lot better than World of Yami Zukan was. Next up, Evil or Live, and it is in the number 7 spot. It's not boring really. It's just, it's very disappointing, because I could see it working. I really could. It's got an interesting premise that could be used as a form of commentary over how people see the internet nowadays, and how some people's way of seeing it can be warped into something negative and kind of toxic, and turn people against each other, and create this authoritarian establishment where people just sort of lose themselves just because someone else thought that they were addicted to the internet. But as it is, it's just a very poorly executed action anime with some terrible comedy strung in the mix. I'll admit there is some decent acting, but the animation is also pretty bad. And it's especially apparent when they tried to do a style over substance approach, which is also not that good. They also have this letterbox style, like seriously, if you've ever been to a movie and you watch it in letterbox, you know what I'm talking about. Like seriously, that's the entire show with how it looks in a nutshell, is that it's letterboxed. And the lip syncing is also pretty damn bad. And the sound effects, they didn't even try. If I could give another positive, it would be the music choices that they used for the opening and ending themes. The opening theme is really cool and fun to listen to, and it pretty much sums up what the anime is about through visuals to an extent, and the same can be said for the ending theme, because it's got some really dark visuals in it, but it's so chill, and it's so chill to listen to. Like, it doesn't, like, they don't match, but it's so jarring how they don't match, but it's in a good way. And I think it kind of works in the show's favor, which is why it's kind of heightened a bit by that. But other than that, it's forgettable, and they just sort of swept what they could have done under the rug with this one. So yeah, I really don't recommend it. Just look up the opening and ending themes and listen to those if you want, because that's the only mileage that you can get out of the show, is the opening and ending themes. Number 8, which is kind of weird. Ikemen Sengoku Bromances Across Time. I swear to God I'm straight. I swear I am, but wow. Okay, if I could sum up this show in only like a sentence or two, it's basically just, it's an isekai anime about some dude that knows a lot about Sengoku stuff, and he goes into the Sengoku period, and it's pretty much just him running around with all these characters, and they're all in Nendoroid form. Like seriously, they have these, they're all chibi-ized, and they look like those Nendoroid figures that you see quite a few times online, either on Facebook or Twitter, and it's just very weird. Like seriously, I could see the premise working just like in Sengoku Nightblood, but it doesn't really work with how they did it. And the animation is kind of awkward, considering that all these characters have these tiny ass bodies with these bloated heads, and if there's a few things that I could take from this, is that one, and a bit of a warning here, the characters flirt with you at the end of every episode. I'm not kidding. Every time this happened, it was just very awkward. I was really worried someone was going to walk in and see that on the screen, and I was like, oh shit, why am I watching this? But yeah, I think that's what it's chopped down to. Just something for women to watch just for the hell of it. And yeah. As for another couple of things, there's this one rapping scene that I actually liked in an ironic way, because all these characters were just rapping out of nowhere, even though that this is in the Sengoku period when rapping wasn't even a thing. I think that I think this sort of predates it to like 300 or 400 years. So how are these characters rapping? So, which is what I was thinking, but it doesn't really matter, because I guess they were just playing it off for comedy, which doesn't work, but whatever. And the opening theme was actually not that bad. I kind of liked it. I didn't skip it ever. So yeah, there's that. But on the whole, it's skippable. It's a short show, but I would still skip it because it just doesn't really do much on any front, really. Number 9, The Reflection. Oh, Stanley, what were you thinking? Okay, so it's not bad, not really bad. It's just below average, really. Um, if I could, I would fix the story at least, the plot. Um, I would try to keep the characters the same as much as possible because they're honestly not that bad, but I would fix a few of them. As for the plot itself, it's just not that good. It really isn't. It just think of any sort of superpowered event where everyone just gets powers because of this cloud or storm or whatever, like in Static Shock or genetically like in X-Men, and that's pretty much the Reflection in a nutshell. If I could get a few things out of it, it's that it kind of made me feel nostalgic based off of how it looked and what they were going for, but then again, that could be because it was produced by the same guy that brought us some of the most recognizable heroes of our time, like Spider-Man, the Hulk, Captain America, all those. Well, he didn't bring all of them. He wasn't in DC, I don't think. I'd be surprised if he was involved with DC in any way. But yeah, you get where I'm coming from. There's a certain nostalgia factor here, which is kind of strange because it's supposed to be its own thing, but it's also produced by one of the biggest comic book giants in the past who knows how long. But yeah. There's a couple of songs that I liked out of it, and the acting was not too bad, but on the whole, it just was very disappointing and didn't really work well. So yeah, if they put a lot more time and effort in it, especially in the animation front, this could have really been pretty decent, but as it is, it's just really disappointing. And it's sad because I was actually looking forward to this a bit because Stan Lee's name was attached to it. And he was also partly involved with a manga that I was reading back in the day, which I liked, and I still have the Shonen Jump issues with them in it. But I guess I should really lower my expectations when this guy's involved because he is getting up there in the years, and I don't think he's getting in as much involvement as he should because of his condition nowadays. I think he's got cancer or something, but I don't know. Don't quote me on that, but I don't think he's got very much longer to live, and it's kind of a damn shame because the guy has inspired quite a lot of people with his work, and this is just one of those things that he's inspired and led to the creation of, and it sucks. It's hard to say that something Stan Lee is involved with sucks, but there you go, it does, and there's no going around it. If you find something good about it, if you like it, good for you, is all I can say. But me, it didn't work for me. Okay, so the least awful anime of the year is One Room. The best way to describe this is that it's supposed to be some sort of simulation of you as the main insert talking to these girls every 3 or 4 episodes. And it serves its purpose, I guess, but other than that, it's just some sort of soft-core replacement for hentai if you don't want a virus in your computer. It's just that, and it's pretty obvious what they were going for given the angles that they shoot the characters with. Like, it gets really obvious. In fact, fun fact, there's supposed to be a version of this that is going to come out with the characters in swimsuits and not their normal clothing. Yeah. The animation is... The art animation is not that bad, honestly. The characters are fine for what they are, but they're still not that developed. and there's not really any plot to speak of. So, and there was only like a few tracks that I really liked in it, especially during the last few episodes. But other than that, this show is pretty forgettable for the most part. But you can still watch it in the course of any time during the day and have it finished in like, I don't know, like a few hours, because it's another one of those short anime. There's like three short anime on here that I either recommend or don't even bother saying much about, because there's not really much to them aside from they're bad. And this is one of them. It's just that it's not as terrible, and it does kind of serve a purpose. But other than that, yeah, just skip it. Or if you're really into that sort of thing, like if you're into finding out what a relationship with your cute neighbor would be like, or your little sister of all things, or hell, even a childhood best friend with big boobs, go on ahead and watch it. I don't really care. But yeah, so that's the worst of this 2017 year, and so yeah, let's get on to stuff that didn't make the cut for this list or the best ofs.
I don't know the rest of these instrumentals things. All I know is it's that song from MHA that rocks.
Okay, so number 10 for the best of list for this year, 2017, is Kemono Friends. And this was the most surprising one out of the bunch for me, because despite how terrible it looks, it is surprisingly really good. Character-wise, it could have been better, but when you're trying to anthropomorphize animals, you can't really do that much with them aside from over-exaggerating certain traits and make them more into personality traits, really. And for how they do that, they do a pretty decent job at it. As for the plot itself, I really liked it. I thought it was really engaging. I especially liked how dark it started to get every so often, and it started to get further in with that sort of theme with it the farther you went. And the theme of discovery is very apparent in it, and that's what made it even more engaging, because you got to learn things as you watched and sort of traveled along with Kaban and Serval and Boss, or whatever his name is. I just call him Boss because everyone else does. But yeah, on the whole, this was a very enjoyable series. I liked a few of the characters. The plot was really engaging and fun, and pretty dark. And on the audio side, the music was pretty good, and the acting, not so different. It was pretty good all around, aside from the visuals, which are still pretty bearable when you really try and get into it. Because if you can get past the visuals, then you will find something to like about it. Like, you will find quite a few things to like. And so yeah, go watch it, see what you think. And I heard that there's a second season coming around, and I'm looking forward to seeing what they come up with for it. Okay, so number 9 is Tsuredure Children, or Tsuredure Children. I don't know why they have an alternate name like that. I mean, just go with either or. Like, seriously, even the promotional for it is Tsuredure Children. But anyway, it has a unique way of doing a rom-com, in that it doesn't have just one pairing but several, and in a way that's kind of a detriment to it. But when you look at it in a more positive light, it makes it a lot more engaging, and it keeps things fresh. You don't get bored with anyone really, because they have a set amount of time and they use that effectively to develop themselves well. Like a couple of the couplings. That sounds weird. Anyway, a couple of the pairings that I liked was this one senior character, I think a class president or something, along with this one delinquent chick. I thought they were very cute together, and there was also this one comedy duo that really try so hard to be romantic that it just comes off as awkward and funny in the best way possible. And the other couples are pretty decent too. Not as good as those two, in my opinion, but as far as rom-coms go, this is pretty good. There are better, but you can't go wrong with this. I'd say watch it. Pretty much everything on here is decent at its worst. I'd say that the worst thing about it, to me, would be the art style, which can be kind of flat and uninteresting, but if you can look past that, you'll find this series very charming, is what I'm trying to say. It's just really cute to watch, and it doesn't really take that much of your time away. You don't really feel like that it's been wasted, because you just enjoy the ride, really, and it's just fun to watch. Okay, so number 8 was a trip. It's Yojo Senki, or Saga of Tanya the Evil. Like, seriously. Tanya really, really sells this. Like, seriously, her character is just amazing. She's a little kid in a war, and she still has the audacity to try and try to one-up God, who has put her in this situation in the first place, just so she doesn't have to acknowledge him. And how far she goes to avoid having to acknowledge him and pray to him in a sincere way just really drives the series forward, despite its weakest element being its other characters, who don't really do that much. And there are some parts of the art style that can be kind of awkward, but this is a first-time studio, and with what they did with the material that they were working with, I say they did a pretty damn decent job. And as for the audio side of things, that was not too bad either. So if I had to sum this series up, I'd say it's pretty much just the little girl just being a little bitch and destroying everything in her path just to get into a comfortable position in the army so she doesn't have to fight. But there's God screwing that up for her, and it's just fun to watch. It's just chaotic. And the magic part of it is interesting in how organic it feels along with the artificial shit, even though that this is supposed to be a World War II-esque world that she is in, but it really works here. And yeah, it's just great. Go watch it, I'm telling you. Okay, so this next entry, number 7, I don't think I've been saying numbers here, but it doesn't really matter. Juni Taisen Zodiac War is a pretty niche series. You have to go into it with a certain mindset, and not just one that has high expectations for it. But if you've read the novel, then you probably have high expectations for it anyway, if you haven't seen it yet. But I don't know. I haven't seen the novel. I haven't read it. I don't think anyone has. I don't even know if it has an English. I don't even know if it has English adaptation yet. But if it does, someone tell me in the comments, because I wouldn't mind getting it myself. But anyway, the way that this show is structured is different than what I'm used to. Like, it's not just some sort of straightforward narrative. It's more It's more character driven than I was really expecting it to be for something that was supposed to be a battle royale, or what I was thinking was going to be a battle royale. The way that these characters interact and how they are developed is pretty interesting for the most part. There's only like a couple of them that are kind of weak, but even then, their motivations are pretty understandable given how dark the world is and how war-driven it is. Like, seriously, even for these warriors, all they know is fighting and trying to survive. And yeah, this was just pretty damn good despite all of its flaws. If I could change like one thing, it would be like a few of the backstories I would probably put the backstories in before having the characters die, or at least some of them, because you're going to not like some of them, maybe, depending on what you expect them to be, or rather what you are hoping they are to, or I don't know. It just that the way that the story is structured, or rather the series itself, just makes it out to where you can't really like some of these characters until near the end, and that's just really disappointing to me. But even then, it's still pretty good in how they do it, because in a way, none of these characters die, but most of them do still, which is kind of a weird thing to say, and it's kind of spoilery when you think about it, but I'm sorry if I did do that. But still, yeah, it's just a really good show that knows how to focus on a character for enough time to make you get to know them for the most part, and I really commend it for that. And the story itself is not that bad either. It's not that great, but it's not that bad either. It was engaging enough to let me care about these characters and try and have me figure out who was going to win in the end for the most part, even though that it was kind of obvious who was going to win, considering. But, yeah, if you like the Monogatari series author, then this is for you, because he's the same guy that did this, who did the original novel, and, yeah. So, if the Monogatari series is just as, if not better than this, then I have been really missing out for the past who knows how long, because, wow, this was pretty damn good. Especially on the animation front. And the music. Don't even get me started on that. But yeah, go watch it, see what you think. Don't have high expectations for it, just have a bit of an inkling of what it's going to be, and see what you think of it as you go along. Just be aware that the way that it's structured is pretty damn formulaic, and that could really hurt your experience for that reason alone. But it didn't really do it for me, for the most part. But it might, just to give you fair warning. Okay, so Tiger Mask W is nothing short of awesome. It made me care about what was going on, and it also made me care about the characters and what they were trying to accomplish, and that says quite a lot for something that's about pro wrestling of all things, or rather what what it's focused on, to have the story be driven forward. I'll admit it has quite a few weak points, such as some of its art, some of its visuals can be kind of but for the most part, I liked its visual style. There was some pretty decent animation, and I just really liked the characters, like I said before, and the plot was pretty engaging for what it was, and I especially liked the music that they used in this. Funny thing, this is supposed to be some sort of legacy series, you know, sort of like a callback to the original Tiger Mask, and for what it is, it doesn't really go into great detail about what the original is, or was, but it gives you enough information to let you grasp what it really was and what this is supposed to be. It's essentially sort of a sequel, but it really stands on its own for the most part, and I really like it for that, and I appreciate it for that too. If I had to give you a fair warning about what to look out for, it's that it can be really campy, and there are a few episodes that just really don't work. Like, there's this one about a couple of idols that I'm pretty sure are, I swear I think they're dudes, or rather their voice actors are dudes, because they do not sound like girls at all. Even though they're supposed to be girls, I guess. But yeah. And there's another couple episodes that I didn't really like that much, but on the whole, it was pretty damn good. There is some voice acting that could have really been done better aside from those idol characters that only showed up for like the one episode. But other than that, and some problems with everything on a minuscule front, this was a pretty fun and awesome series to watch, and I can't really recommend it enough. I just say go ahead and watch it and see what you think. And yeah, try to enjoy it if you can. Blue Exorcist Kyoto Saga was a rather pleasant surprise, really. I wasn't really expecting a second season of Blue Exorcist, of all things, despite the fact that the ending for the first season, you could say, wasn't even canon. If you know about the manga. And even for those that didn't know about the manga, it just didn't really fit. But for what they did with it, it was alright. But still, there was still a lot of things that needed to be covered. And yeah, this season really helped with that. I liked seeing these characters again after so long. I enjoyed the story. The animation, as usual, for A1 is pretty damn good. And I liked the music and the acting. I especially enjoyed seeing Rin again because he's such a good kid. I really don't know how else to describe him. He's just a good kid that is very humbled despite the fact that he's the son of Satan. Which is something weird that I never thought I'd ever say. But yeah, if there were a few things that I could change, it would be some of the expressions in the animation along with character development. And that's pretty much it. There's some characters that get developed, I guess, but they don't really work. Because it's mostly from the animation itself that it doesn't really work. They should have really tried, but with the expressions for at least one of the characters. And there's some moments that were a bit funny in that awkward kind of way, like, wow, did they seriously just do that? But yeah, for the most part, I really enjoyed this season, and if they ever do make a third one, I really hope that it's a good follow-up, because this one, it can't really get much better than this, I don't think. So, yeah. Go watch it if you have seen the first season and are on the fence about this one, because I think it's worth it. Miss Kobayashi's Dragon Maid is I don't know how to describe it, but all I can say is that I pretty much loved this show for the most part. The characters were likable. I enjoyed what little lore there was in dragons, and the animation. I can't believe that I can't believe I haven't seen anything Kyoto animation related besides this, because wow, it's just amazing what they did with it. I mean, sure, the character designs are not the greatest, but I like the style of them, you know? They just really work with this kind of series. Like, it's mostly for comedy, but there's a good enough bit of character in it to make it work for like 12 or 13 episodes. And I especially like the dynamics that go into the characters and how they work off of each other. It's just really fun to watch, and it can get pretty damn crazy, especially later on. So, yeah. As for the audio side of things, I especially liked the opening. I even listened to it a few times after I got done with the show because it was so good, and I especially liked the visuals in it, just 'cause. And the acting was pretty top-notch, but if it wasn't, it wouldn't be as high on the list as it is right now. So, yeah. Again, I really love this series. If they ever make more of it, I will watch it. I really will. So, yeah. Number 3, Recovery of an MMO Junkie. I sort of hastened myself when I was saying MMO. Blah, 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 blah. But, yeah. This series is a pretty special one because you don't really see much of anything like it anymore. Like, seriously, most romances are usually about two teenagers in this medium, and it's kind of a shame. Because we don't really get to see anyone in their 30s or early or late 20s getting together in these kinds of things, unless it's sort of like a side thing, like a subplot. But with it being the main focus of the series, it was really engaging and adorable. Sure, there was quite a bit of coincidences, but I think one of the central themes of this show is that the world is smaller than we think it is, and we never know who we're going to meet online, and then find out that they were closer than we thought they were. And this series, it encapsulates that well. Captures that well. I don't know if encapsulates is even a word. It sounds like a word, but yeah. The animation is kind of well, or rather the art style. The animation is not that bad, but for what it is, I liked it. I thought it was good. The characters, they could have been better, but for what they are, they're believable, and they are funny when they can be. That's another thing about this show. It knows when to be serious and when to be funny. It doesn't try and mesh the two together that much, but when it does, it works. And yeah, the romance part of it was being the highlight, probably the best part of it, or maybe close to it, because these two have their own issues, and they really show that well in this series, especially with the main character, Moriko. She is adorable, but she's also pretty tragic in how she got to this point. Like, seriously, she used to be very successful, but now this lifestyle that she's choosing is kind of a questionable one. As for Yuta, he embraces sort of both sides of it. He's a good businessman, but he also likes the side where he gets to goof off and play games with his friends online. And yeah, Moriko is especially endearing and funny. I also liked Kawaii, Yuta's co-worker and senior in the company that they work at. I can't remember what it was called if they ever said anything about it. But yeah, he's probably my second favorite character out of all of them, because he just really drives the romance even further, because of how he knows these two characters. And yeah, the opening theme was pretty damn good, and I like the ending theme too. And the acting really elevates every bit of the series, especially with Moriko, because there are quite a few scenes where I will never get out of my head because of how funny or just adorable they were. Especially this one involving chicken during Christmas time. If you've seen the series, you know what I'm talking about. It's just hilarious. I will never get that out of my head. But yeah, this was just a really fun and great series with some very serious issues that were touched upon really well in it. So yeah, go watch it. And if I could sum it up, pretty damn good for something directed by an anti-Semite. Okay, so Little Witch Academia is... okay, story-wise, it's probably not as good as MMO Junkie, but for a Trigger series, it's still pretty good, and on the whole, I really enjoyed watching it. I don't know what it is about it. It's not just the animation, it's just pretty much everything. The weakest element in it is the characters. And even then, you get enough of them to know who they are, and some of them get enough development that it doesn't really feel... they don't really feel that one note or cliche or tropey, you know? I mean, sure, Akko can be pretty generic, but there's a lot worse out there, and I honestly liked her character, along with everyone else that she's friends with, like Susie and Lotte. I think that's how they're pronounced. Forgive me if I'm pronouncing them wrong. I watched the subbed version, so yeah. It's pretty similar to My Hero Academia in some respects, but it's different enough to keep you engaged and to not have you just sort of have it be overshadowed by what it's possibly inspired by. Because it's just really fun to watch, and there's a lot of creativity to it, which, given that it's Trigger, that's not really a surprise, really. They know how to make a series work, especially when they have Yo Yahari, or whatever his name is, at the helm of the animation department. As for the acting and the music, they work. They're pretty damn good. And especially, it really works with the animation, especially with the acting, because if you're going to act like a certain character, you need to have them be brought to life, not just through visuals, but also through how they speak. And this series really brought that home with how they did it. But then again, it's Trigger. They know how to do this well. They know how to do this almost perfectly at this point. So yeah, if I could change one thing, it'd be to put a little more development in some of the characters. Because the ones that did get development really should have gotten it sooner, and some of them that didn't really needed it. But as they are, I liked the cast. I thought they were fun to watch. I thought they were pretty good. But yeah, again, that was pretty much the only thing that I saw wrong with it, was just the characters. And even then, yeah. So if you're into Trigger, or if you're not, I'd say go watch this, because it's a fun series. Yeah. Don't be surprised if the characters aren't to your liking, or the plot, really, because it's pretty predictable, but still very fun to watch and still pretty engaging in my eyes. Finally, number 1, My Hero Academia Season 2. Yeah, I only had one thing that really is still ingrained in my head that I found wrong with this season, and that was just Shoto's story, like his backstory and all that. But even then, it was alright, and everything else just sort of kept moving forward in a way that didn't really make it seem like that big of an issue, which is honestly not that bad of a thing to do, because if you're watching a comedy show or something, you're going to notice quite a few jokes don't hit, but if they're fast paced enough, you aren't really going to notice it that much. And this is sort of what it does for My Hero Academia. If it tries to do something serious but sort of doesn't work as well as most other things, it just moves on to the next thing and tries to make it even better than that. And I really commend it for that. The story is pretty damn good. I liked this tournament arc that they had at the beginning, and the villain of sorts that they had for the latter half was very intriguing, really. It's amazing that this is a shonen series because the show can get dark, and this is the darkest villain that I've seen in a shonen series for a while now. As for the animation, art and animation, it's bones. That's all I'm going to say. It's bones, okay? If you're not familiar with Bones by now, then you obviously don't really know much about the industry because they're just great at adapting something. Like, seriously, I was seeing posts online about everyone comparing the manga to the anime and how they looked so similar for the most part, and it just shows how dedicated they are to adapting something on the screen through visuals. And as for the characters, they're still pretty one note, but they get enough of the spotlight to be enjoyable to watch, and I thank them for that. And especially with who was voicing them, and the ones that got the most development, I especially enjoyed. Even Shoto, who was probably the weakest out of the main characters that gets development. So yeah, that really says a lot about a show when I can even enjoy the weaker parts of it to their fullest extent. So yeah, on the music and acting front, like I said before, the acting really elevates the visuals and the story, and the music was pretty damn good, like usual. Like, seriously, it's so good. I'm surprised that I've never heard anything like it before. I especially liked the third opening myself, if we're going by the overall series. As for the ending themes, I liked them all. I liked both of them. So yeah. Like I said before, this it has its problems, mostly Shoto, but even then, it really works. It just all really works, and even when it doesn't work, they really try their damnedest to make you just sort of have things just run smoothly despite the stumbles, and despite there not being that many stumbles, which are still kind of noticeable, this series did exceptionally well. Which, yeah, I really don't know how else. I really don't know how else to word it. Again, not very much issues I had with this, and it turned out to be probably the best anime out of this year for me. I mean, heck, I gave it a 10 out of 10, despite the problems. But the way I see it, a 10 out of 10 is something that doesn't really have a lot wrong with it. Like, the problems with it are so minuscule that they are barely noticeable to me, and that's pretty much what My Hero Academia is. The problems that I saw with it were so minuscule that it didn't really falter in terms of execution. So, yeah. Anyway, that was my top worst and bests of this year, or rather just the entirety of what I watched this year as a whole. Let me know what you guys think down below, and if you have any recommendations from this last year, let me know. Heck, if you have any recommendations from probably 2015 or 16, go ahead and comment them down below. And yeah, if you want to see my scores, you can check down in the description and even on my anime list if you feel so inclined to see what else I think of other series that weren't from this year. So anyway, yeah, that's all from me. I'll see you guys on the next one, hopefully sooner than this one was. So yeah, peace.